And I might as well make this video while I'm doing this here. This one is on CO2, and I know there's a million videos out there about the same stuff, and you have people saying the same thing, and I'm just, I'm here to reiterate what has been said, and also to kind of clarify a few of my own challenges with this, and what is practical, and tried the DIY, and that kind of thing. So get into it there. What I'm showing you is in the far back, and they do say you should keep it more in the middle of the tank, but I have the canister filter blowing right onto it, so it's kind of okay in that far back corner. The bubbles you just saw were actually from the canister filter, but it is slowly spitting out some little bubbles. I barely turn on CO2. I don't like to have it on very much. And so, I like to just barely keep it on. I actually don't turn it off at night. And then, okay, so I'm going to say right now that unless you have, put it up here, unless you have a jet blowing around the water on top, CO2 is dangerous. I mean, I would not recommend it at all unless you have a bubbler or something else going. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that bubbler, that leaves or pulls the CO2 out of the water, and it does, but also it's what gives the fish oxygen. And the only other way besides that, if you really want that calm tank with absolutely no water flow in it, and then what do you have? No filter, but at that point you would want to turn it off at night, because that is one of the moments at that point where, yes, you actually wouldn't want that CO2 on at nighttime, because obviously they say, oh, plants leach CO2 at night. Well, I don't know how much they really give off at night. I think what it is mostly is just when the sun or light is not hitting them, they're not going through photosynthesis, and they're actually not giving off all that oxygen into the water. So, it's more like they're not giving off oxygen. It's not that all of a sudden they're just off-gassing CO2 like crazy. I mean, they may be making a little bit of it. I don't know the science that much behind it, but I'm here to tell you that plants don't fill the tank with CO2 when the lights are off. They produce a little, but what it is they stop producing as much oxygen. And so, naturally CO2 would be what the fish are putting out, and CO2 would be in the room and in the air. So, but where I'm getting at is that I tried DIY, and I guess this is what I'm trying to start the video on, is that I attempted to make the yeast. And oh my god, it was just such a nightmare. I bought myself some sealant gel, like the Aquarium stuff, but I'm not sure if it was quite as high a grade. But I attempted to seal the tube to the bottle cap so I could get this tight seal, and I shook it a little bit once and it blew the seal. I mean, it was just like, are you kidding me? And when I made that seal of that silicone, I got it all over my hands, and I just really, apparently it's really bad, next to carcinogenic, and I'm going, God, I got that all over my hands just to make this thing, and then I just watched it fail on me within a day. And then, here's what I saw, is that I would make the solution, I'd wait a day or two, and I would really see nothing. I would see maybe just one or two bubbles, and actually I found the pressure couldn't even push it down as deep as I wanted it into the aquarium. It just hardly would build up that much pressure. So I would go over and I would this is my first couple times doing it, and I would shake the bottle, and then it would just explode. It just blah, 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 and it would blow the head off the CO2 distributor, and it was just nasty. You could smell the yeast, and see, I'm one for DIY. I'm one for it. I'm really one for people. If you saw my aquaponics setup, it's totally DIY. I mean, but there are certain things where when it becomes so stressful that you almost are ready to give up on what you're doing. And then when you realize that the price of what you paid for, I know it's cheap, vinegar's cheap, yeast is cheap, sugar's cheap, all that stuff, your bottle's cheap, but over time it's kind of a lot. And hey, you had to drive to go to Walmart, those things do add up. So if nothing else, let's just put it on there that to get yourself into DIY, you're gonna at least spend $20. Let's say that for the hosing, so you spent $20, but now you have a product that really doesn't pay off. If you want a planted tank that really, really succeeds, honestly, it's not gonna do the job. It kind of does it. And so you're getting, for $20, something that you're almost better off not even messing with. Unless you just had a big batch of it, you made a huge batch, and then you got a big milk jug sitting by your tank and stuff, and that's another thing, is I am a little vain. I want to make this kind of a clean, clear experience. I don't really want to see a bunch of PVC pipes and things like that all over. And so the thing is that with this CO2, it is expensive. And God, I know. It was, here's what I did, is I bought a little Flavel regulator top for like $80. And I love the guy. He's a great guy at the aquarium shop. But he kind of said it with a twinkle in his eye, because I asked him, I said, is there any kind of adapter that could get like a paintball tank to fit on this? And he's like, oh no. And he's like, but I'll give you 15% off if you buy the cartridges. And then he's going on about how like you could get one bubble, if you did one bubble an hour or something, you could get 3 months out of this cartridge, 3 months. So I'm like, oh, 3 months, And I start realizing with that bubble counter, like, how little that was and how little effect that would have on the plants. And then I'm watching all these, main guys with their tanks, and I'm watching them just flood it with CO2. You can just see this little amount of bubbles coming out the entire time. And so I just knew right away that it was like, man, that bubble an hour just ain't enough at all. And sorry for my hillbilly accent here, but I quickly realized that I needed to kind of up the ante a little bit on this Flavel tank, and I watched it empty out on me in 3 days. Okay, so this cartridge is $18 at the store, and I watched it empty out on me in 3 days as I was talked into it lasting 3 months. And it was just like, are you kidding me? And so that's the saddest thing. Once again, that's why I am still slightly for some DIY, because I do feel bad about people, especially people with not a lot of money, who want to do this. And hey, do it any way you can if you really want to do it and you feel passionate about it. I got a neighbor who's hardly got the lowest quality filter in a tank with brine tank, and he hasn't cleaned the glass in probably 5 years, and the water's 6 inches below the water level, and he probably has never done a water change. It's a good tank, but I'm just saying that, he hasn't put much into it. He's got that old metal aquarium style with the metal along the sides and stuff like that. So it's just obvious that you can somewhat have yourself a tank without paying a lot of money. So now the thing is, though, was that I was right, and there was a adapter for the Flavel, and it does connect to a paintball tank here, and that's what I'm going to show you. Is we're going to raise this up nice and slow so you guys don't have to throw up watching the video. But anyway, there it is. So there's this Flavel, and it's hard to see. I know it's dark. It's just a little regulator, and it connects to a paintball tank. And that's been a pain too, because you got to go to the sports center, and you got to talk to some young kid at the sports center, and he doesn't have it 1 week, and the next week he can't figure out what's wrong with it, and then they sold you one that's got the burst disc broken, and so it's not been easy, at all, the CO2. But that adapter does connect to a paintball can. And once again, now you're spending $25 on the paintball can, and you're spending $15 on the adapter, which I did find on Amazon. And I'm sure Flavel is not happy about that because they specifically machined that head to not fit a single thing like it. Not even it won't even fit those little BB gun CO2 things that are just like the Flavel tank or whatever. So it's its own deal, and luckily some company made a adapter for it. Thank God, because I'd just been totally ripped off had I had to buy the Flavel stuff. So anyway, so yeah, the thing is though, is once you buy it, and I'll say this, here's the price, you got $89, probably $60 on Amazon for the CO2 pressure gauge, or whatever the heck you call it. I just called something earlier. And then you've got probably another $5 in hose, and then you've got the $25 in the CO2 tank. But all said and done, $110 later, you have a $5 fill up for the CO2 tank. And that needle takes 3 months to go down. So believe it or not, I can run my CO2 at a moderate rate, and it takes about 3 months for that. Look at that angelfish. He's really wanting to be in the TV here. And anyway, it's true. It's like, okay, now you're finally at a point where this isn't going to cost so much. It's $5 every 3 months to get my tank some CO2, And my plants aren't perfect. I mean, nothing's perfect. It's, I struggle with some things, beard algae and whatnot, but CO2 does help with that too. It actually makes it to where the plants grow a little stronger and they can resist the algae takeover and stuff. But anyway, basically, yeah, this point, beating a dead horse, you're gonna need it if you're gonna want to have a full-grown tank. If you want to put some plants in that'll eventually get covered in algae, and you might have some of the easier plants to grow, especially if you want to look for some of the simpler plants. They will grow without CO2. It's some of the other plants, the simpler or more delicate plants, I guess, especially at the rapid rate that you want them to grow. That's a big part of it, is how fast you want your tank to kind of take over. Like, for instance, this dwarf sage, I think that's what it is, dwarf sage all over the bottom. If you didn't have CO2 and good light, that might take 5 years to get to that point. But with CO2 and light and, throwing a few of the starts around to get it all kind of evened out, that dwarf sage all of a sudden is taking over the entire bottom of the tank very quickly. So that's kind of the difference between CO2. But what I'm getting at is kind of more of a DIY myths, facts kind of, it's basically worth your while to buy the CO2 setup. And I'm anti-chemical. I'm totally for natural things. I'm all about natural alternatives. And unfortunately, there's a few things in life when you actually really do realize a chemical does the job. And so that's tough. I eat mostly organic foods, and it's kind of like this CO2 compressed from the football store or whatever, the sports store or whatever. It's not my place. It's not where I want to be. It's not, I mean, I play a little tennis, I go to the gym once in a while, but, it's just, I don't want to go there. I don't want to buy stuff from a hunting department, and that's what it's in. It's in the hunting department. And so, like I said, to me, it is what it is, but I will tell you that it is worth buying, and it is an important factor in the plants. And I just wish all the stuff didn't cost so much money to where, average person could really get into enjoying it. And, that's the problem. People think that, I can get a tank for $50, and reality is it's $500, and that's hardly even covering the main stuff you need. This is a very moderate tank. I don't even have it on a stand right now. I mean, that's mostly because, one is I'm moving, and then two, I, really at the time didn't have the money for a stand, so I got some cardboard under it so it doesn't mold the carpet. But anyway, I'm just trying to say that the CO2, it's necessary. And, if you really seem to get DIY to work for you, that's great. If you don't mind looking at the kind of the setup of it, that's great. But, for professional environment, for simplicity's sakes, for in the end more affordable on your pocketbook, just ease of mind, because when all these things become a hassle, it's like if you got to do water change, that's a hassle. If you got to do filter change, that's a hassle. If you got to, this and that, hand in the tank, that's a hassle. It's a labor of love too. But if all of a sudden mixing the yeast and the sugar and all that, that's a hassle. That's a labor of love. And so, you're adding on, it just kind of adds up. And that's one little thing that it does take a lot. You're in the kitchen, you're boiling water, you got a pan here, pan there. And if you're working a full-time job, especially, or something, who's really got that time? So, let's just say that, I guess I'm just kind of spilling it all out there. This is what it is, CO2. And, it's easy to have someone on YouTube tell you they use CO2, and what they don't tell you is it's $150 fucking dollars. I mean, sorry for my language. I really apologize. I try to not, kids are watching this or something, but it's, basically, it is what it is. I'm just trying to point out there that aquarium stuff is not cheap, and CO2 is important for planted tanks, and the paintball canister is a good way to go. If it works, it's refillable. It's $5 at that point. You probably could get away without it, but you're not going to see fast growth, and you will deal with a little bit more of beard algae attacking the plants and things like that. So, alright, that's enough of that video. Just kind of covering the basis of CO2. Alright, thanks a lot. Aquarium Basics.